The gunshot punched through the ceiling tiles and dropped a shower of white dust onto the emergency room floor. 30 people froze. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere behind the nurse's station, a heart monitor beeped 3 times and went silent. Amara Osei-Mensah, 3 months into her first real nursing job, still fumbling with the electronic charting system, still apologizing every time she bumped into a gurney, dropped behind the counter and felt something cold shift in her left scrub pocket. A challenge coin. Kwame's challenge coin. And in the space between one heartbeat and the next, the rookie nurse that Veterans Memorial Hospital had been laughing about for 12 weeks disappeared. What replaced her was something no one in that building was ready for. There's a particular way that Veterans Memorial Hospital in Boston smells at 6 in the morning. Floor wax and instant coffee and something older underneath the kind of antiseptic that's been soaking into brick walls since the Korean War. The building sits on a hill overlooking the harbor, old and stubborn and underfunded. And on clear mornings you can see the masts of the USS Constitution from the 3rd floor break room window. Amara loved that view. She'd stand there with her thermos of 2 strong Ghanaian coffee, not the watery stuff from the machine, but the real thing her father shipped in from a shop in D.C., and she'd watch the harbor wake up. Tugboats, seagulls, the Constitution sitting quiet and perfect in its berth at Charlestown Navy Yard. She never told anyone why that ship made her chest ache. At 34, Amara Osei-Mensah was the newest, youngest, and by a comfortable margin, the most uncertain nurse in the emergency department. She wore scrubs a size too large, kept her natural hair cropped close enough to require no maintenance, and had a habit of apologizing for things that weren't her fault. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry. Was that your pen? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were. The other nurses had noticed. Of course they had. In a VA hospital staffed by people who'd spent decades dealing with trauma, with bureaucracy, with a particular brand of institutional madness that comes from caring for veterans while being slowly strangled by budget cuts. A soft-spoken rookie who flinched at raised voices stood out like a civilian at a military ball. Kid couldn't start an IV on a garden hose, one of the techs said in the break room, not quietly enough. Amara heard. She always heard. 12 years of training had made her ears a precision instrument, capable of distinguishing the click of a rifle safety from 50 yards in a sandstorm. But she'd smile and duck her head and go back to her charting. And nobody thought twice about it. Nobody except Rita Sandoval. Master Chief Sandoval retired, 68 years old. Volunteer front desk coordinator, had been watching Amara since her first shift, not watching the way the other nurses watched, with skepticism or amusement, watching the way someone studies a puzzle they haven't quite solved. It was the exits. Every time Amara entered a room, her eyes swept left to right, then up, then back to center. She mapped windows, doors, choke points. She did it in under 3 seconds, and she did it so naturally that you'd miss it entirely if you weren't looking for it. Rita was looking for it, because Rita had done the same thing every day for 30 years aboard Navy vessels, and she recognized the behavior the way a musician recognizes perfect pitch instinctively and with absolute certainty. But the old Master Chief said nothing. She just watched, and she waited. The one person who gave Amara genuine warmth was improbably the most difficult patient in the hospital. Gunnery Sergeant Raymond Delacroix, USMC, retired, had been recovering from lumbar fusion surgery for 2 weeks, and had already driven 3 nurses to request reassignment. He was 58, built like a brick wall that had been slightly softened by age and hospital food, and he spoke in the flat, carrying voice of a man who had spent decades making himself heard over helicopter rotors and gunfire. "Hey, new girl." Amara turned. Ray was in his wheelchair by the window, a cold cup of coffee balanced on his armrest. A crossword puzzle he'd been butchering for 3 days spread across his lap. "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. What's a 9-letter word for stubborn?" "Obstinate." He squinted at her. "How old are you? Anyway, you even old enough to drive?" "I'm 34. 34. He shook his head like she'd told him she was 12. "My boots are older than you. "Come here and fix my IV. The last kid they sent in nearly put it in my kneecap." She fixed his IV in 12 seconds flat. Inserted it so smoothly he didn't feel the needle. Ray looked at the insertion site. Looked at her. Something flickered behind his eyes, a question forming, but then a monitor beeped 2 rooms down and Amara was gone before he could ask it. In her left pocket, a heavy brass coin pressed against her thigh with each step. She'd carried it every day for 5 years. On one side, a trident and an anchor. On the other, engraved initials, K.A. She never took it out. She never talked about it. But sometimes, late in a shift, when the ER was quiet and the patients were sleeping and the hum of the old building settled into her bones, Amara would hum, low and soft, a lullaby her grandmother sang in Accra, about a child who crossed a great river and found a new home on the other side. She didn't know anyone could hear her. Ray could hear her. From his room down the hall, he'd lie still and listen, and he'd think, "I know that sound. That's not just singing. That's someone keeping themselves together." But what did he know? He was just a broken-down gunnery sergeant with a bad back and a crossword puzzle he couldn't finish. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that by this time next week, the woman they called the new girl would have the entire emergency room on its feet. The Monday before everything changed, Amara made the mistake of telling the truth. It happened during a morning staff meeting, the kind of airless, fluorescent-lit gathering where hospital administration pretended to care about frontline concerns, and the frontline pretended to believe them. 15 nurses packed into a conference room that smelled like stale donuts and dry erase markers. Denise Kowalski ran the meeting. She always ran the meeting. At 55, Denise was the senior ER nurse, the union representative, and the unofficial gatekeeper of Veterans Memorial's emergency department. She had 30 years of seniority, a badge lanyard thick with credentials, and a way of looking at new nurses that made them feel like they'd tracked mud onto a freshly mopped floor. "Supply requests," Denise said, flipping a page on her clipboard. "We're still waiting on the level 1 infuser replacement parts and the updated crash cart medications. Moving on." Actually, Amara's voice was so quiet that 3 people had to turn around to see who'd spoken. "I wanted to ask about the supply shortages in the ER. We've been low on basic trauma supplies for 6 weeks now. We ran out of chest seals last Thursday." The room went still, not because the question was inappropriate, because Amara had asked it. The new girl, the one who apologized for breathing. Denise's pen stopped moving. She looked at Amara the way a cat looks at a mouse that has just walked out of its hole and sat down on the kitchen counter. "We've filed the requisitions through proper channels," Denise said. "These things take time. 6 weeks is a long time to be short on chest seals in a trauma-capable ER. Are you questioning the supply chain process, Miss Osei-Mensah?" The pronunciation came out wrong, deliberate or not. It sounded like she'd garbled the name on purpose. Amara felt her jaw tighten. A micro-reaction she buried instantly. "I'm not questioning the process. I'm saying the process isn't working. We had 2 GSWs last week, and I had to improvise occlusive dressings with—" "You improvised medical equipment?" Denise's eyebrows rose. "Without authorization? That's a compliance issue." The patient was coding. I'll need to document this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention." And just like that, the conversation was over. Amara sat down. Around her, the other nurses carefully avoided eye contact, the universal signal of people who agreed with her but weren't about to say so. After the meeting, Amara found herself in the stairwell that led to the administrative offices. She hadn't planned to go there, but the words were still burning in her chest, and the stairwell felt safer than the ER, and her feet carried her upward before her brain could intervene. Gerald Whitcomb's office was on the 4th floor. The hospital's board chairman kept a part-time office there, mahogany desk, leather chair, a window view that probably cost more than Amara's annual salary and maintenance alone. The walls were covered in framed photographs. Whitcomb shaking hands with senators, Whitcomb at ribbon-cutting ceremonies, Whitcomb in a golf shirt with the governor. In every photo, he was smiling. In every photo, there was a veteran somewhere in the background, positioned like a prop. Mr. Whitcomb, I'm sorry to bother you. Come in. Come in. He waved without looking up from his laptop. He was 63, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of tan that came from golf courses and not from deployments. What can I do for you, sweetheart? Sweetheart. Amara's back straightened half an inch before she caught herself. Sir, I'm a nurse in the ER. I've been trying to address some critical supply shortages. The supply issue. Right. He leaned back, fingers laced over his stomach. Listen, what's your name again? Amara. Amara Osei-Mensah. Right. Listen, Amara, I understand the frustration, but we're in a budget transition. The board has approved a major capital project, the Whitcomb Veterans Wellness Center, and we need to prioritize spending during the construction phase. The Wellness Center. You're building a wellness center while the ER runs out of chest seals? Whitcomb's smile tightened. Just a fraction. Nurses don't understand budgets. That's not a criticism. It's just your job is patient care. My job is the big picture. And the big picture sometimes requires hard choices about where money goes. Sir, with respect, the ER security system hasn't been updated in. The metal detector at the main entrance is being repaired. His voice dropped half a degree. It's on the schedule. It's been broken for a month. These things take time. The same words Denise had used. The exact same words. Is there anything else? There was so much else. There was a whole building full of else veterans waiting in hallways because there weren't enough beds, nurses doubling shifts because there wasn't enough staff, an ER that smelled like floor wax because that was cheaper than fixing the ventilation system. But Amara recognized the wall when she hit it. She'd spent 12 years recognizing walls. No, sir. Thank you for your time. She was almost through the door when he called after her. Oh, and Amara? A word of advice. He smiled the way a man smiles when he knows exactly how much power he has. Rookies are easy to replace. Keep your head down, do your job, and let the people who understand how this place works handle the rest. She walked back to the ER with her fingernails cutting crescents into her palms. That afternoon, she found a written warning in her inbox. Denise had filed it. Failure to follow medication documentation protocol. The incident she was citing had happened 2 weeks ago, a minor charting delay during a code blue, the kind of thing that happens to every nurse and is usually addressed with a verbal reminder. Amara stared at the warning. Then she stared at the ER at the broken equipment, the exhausted staff, the veterans sitting in plastic chairs waiting for a system that had already given up on them. She thought about quitting. She'd done it before. She was good at walking away. She'd walked away from 12 years, from a team, from a name that used to mean something in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. In her pocket, Kwame's coin sat heavy and still. She didn't quit. Not yet. But that night, alone in her apartment in Dorchester, she didn't hum the lullaby. She sat in silence and stared at the wall, and the wall stared back, and neither of them had anything useful to say. The nightmare came back on Tuesday night, the way it always did when she was stressed. Niger, 2017. The Tongo region. The ambush hit at 11:40 inches the morning. One moment they were moving through scrub brush in a loose formation, and the next the world became noise and dust and the particular cracking sound that 7.62 rounds make when they pass close enough to feel the heat. In the dream, it happened the way it had happened. SEAL Team 8. Separated from their support element, 4 operators and 1 combat medic pinned down in a dry riverbed, while 50-plus militants swept the area. The other 3 teams were engaged a kilometer east. No air support for 40 minutes. No extraction for 11 hours. Amara's senior chief